All right, so today we're going to talk about the difficulties of getting a diagnosis of Lewy body dementia. When Hank first started having the symptoms, we were almost 3 years getting a diagnosis. And it was really a difficult process, and we went to doctor after doctor. I researched, I called hospitals and neurologists and collected up any information we could. I remember at one point we went to a chiropractor on a regular basis in North Carolina when we lived there, and ended up we went to another one in North Carolina that our chiropractor referred us to, and ended up that one was an hour and a half to 2 hours from our house, and we went 3 days a week to see this neurologist. So we had to get up early and go and get back to our office, and we had to do counseling all day, and we had to do that 3 days a week. And I remember it was extremely expensive because they did not take insurance. But we did everything we knew, and I researched day and night. We did supplements, and we still do a lot of supplements, and it's been 9 years, and we still do a lot of supplements for Hank. I remember when we first started out, we went to a neurologist. I just called, got an appointment. He didn't have to have a referral or anything. And I remember we went to Greenville, North Carolina, and seen a neurologist. And do you remember when we went to see that neurologist? Do you remember some of the first visits?
I just remember that somebody else, well, they had it scheduled for somebody else, but I don't know what happened. But we got this other guy that was older, and he was getting ready to retire, and we seen him. I don't know how many times.
I don't know how many times either. I didn't look
Four or
back at the
five,
medical
maybe.
records. Yeah.
4 or 5 times maybe, and but what got me was in the middle of one of the sessions, and that's when my leg was really hurting and I couldn't hardly walk, and he had me walk up and down the aisle a few times in the room, and then he kind of looked at us and said, "Are you drunk?" Yeah, and that just blew me away. It's like I, I couldn't respond. I didn't know really what to say. I
Right.
mean, what do you say to that? When you're going someplace and you think the doctor, was going to be professional, and he wasn't.
And I remember we would go sometimes too, and we would talk to him, and I would tell him what's been going on and the roller coaster ride. And I remember one time he looked at it and says, "Well, he's all right today." And at that time, I wasn't for sure what he had. It was a little bit later after that that we realized it was Lewy body dementia by all the research we did. But we didn't know exactly what it was. We were looking for answers. And I remember asking the doctor if it was his wife with these symptoms, what would he do? And he said he would do the same thing, which I didn't believe him, but anyway. So we didn't stay at that neurologist on and on. We did finally get into another not urologist, but neurologist. We went to Duke, got in at Duke, and when we went, Hank was not having those symptoms at that time. Uh, and so they would not give him a diagnosis. So I'm not saying this is a smart thing to do, but this is what I did in the end. He got another neurologist appointment at the UNC. And when he had that appointment, I had figured out his stressors and what would affect him. And we went, and we were an hour and a half to 2 hours from our house. And it's really bad to say, but I had him to drive. And I knew the stress of driving through Raleigh, North Carolina, and all that traffic would be such a stressor. By the time he got there, he would be worn down, and they would be able to see those symptoms in him. And that's exactly what happened. And they began to see the other side instead of how great he was doing. And we went a couple of times like that, and I mean, we went like every 6 months. But the second time we went, I did the same thing again, and I felt really bad that Hank was so tired by the time he got there. But that's what we did. And when we were still in Greenville, North Carolina, at the first neurologist, do you remember all the tests that they gave you? The different tests you had to go through?
Yeah, I had to do that big long, there's one real long one. It took a long time. You had to check all these boxes, you know.
That's when you went to the psychologist.
Is that the
Uh-huh.
psychologist?
He went to Dr. I can't remember his name, but Dr. Ever or something. I can't remember. But anyway, I remember he went there, and that was an extremely long test. That took like 4 hours, something like it. Yeah. And that's when we found out that you had, was it mild cognitive decline?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year he went to a different doctor, Dr. Duncan, in Greenville, North Carolina, and we found out then he had moderate cognitive decline. And that has been probably 4 or 5 years ago, and he's not been back to see if he's declined any more in that way, because it doesn't matter at this point. Do you remember any other of the physical tests that you had done at the hospital or anywhere?
I had was it epidural or
He had a spinal tap.
spinal tap?
Yeah. And that was to see if he had MS or not. But he didn't have MS. But that was an ordeal going to have all that done. He had all the blood tests going. We just kept doing blood test upon blood test, and then it was Lyme disease, but he didn't have Lyme disease. And was any of his vitamins low? None of his vitamins was low. He was good with vitamin D and B12, all that stuff. And they just didn't have any idea. Your blood pressure was a little bit high, but you took medicine for that. You went and you had some kind of scan too. I can't necessarily remember at the hospital. I remember that day. He went in and he had a CAT scan of the brain. Yeah. And that didn't show anything. But later on, when we got into UNC, he had an MRI of the brain, and it showed malformations in the front part of his brain. And that was when they really began to say, well, you know, it could really be Lewy body dementia, when they began to see that. So
Mm-hmm. It's just, you know, it was just a lot of work for nothing, really. I mean, in my opinion, in the end, it worked out, but it seemed like ring around the rosies until you finally got somebody. It seemed like they really cared, really saw, and stuff, and it made me feel better, and I'm sure it did Madonna also.
And we're not saying at UNC that they really acted like they cared. We thought they did in the beginning until we went in and seen the doctor. And we said something about being referred to a psychiatrist. We would still see the neurologist, but to get in with a psychiatrist too, to be evaluated again, because that's what his original psychiatrist had told him to do, because he said, I just think you need to get your neurologist there to refer you to somebody that would be working with that doctor. And that doctor said, I'm the end of the line, and I don't refer to anybody. So we dealt with that, but we kept pushing through and kept going until finally this doctor did see it, did get him on some medicine. That didn't do much, but we tried it. When Hank really started getting better from his medication was in the very beginning, when we started seeing a psychiatrist, because we're mental health counselors. We're all about psychiatry and getting help for counseling, you know, all that stuff. We're about that. And I remember he got in with the doctor at a psychiatric office where I go to see a psychiatrist at, and it was a different doctor there. And when we went in, Hank was depressed and anxious. Never been depressed or anxious in all of his years of living. He was, 47, about 48 at that time. Never been depressed or anxious till then. The doctor at that time put him on a stimulant in order to help with his thought processes, to get his blood vessels opened up in his brain and get him to be able to have more thoughts and be able to talk, things like that. And I remember when they put him on that medicine, it really made a difference for him. And he could get up in the morning and carry on a conversation again. And he would take that 3 times a day, and it really helped. So we did that for a while, and that worked, and then wasn't long that didn't work anymore. And when I say it wasn't long, I'm saying it still worked probably almost a year. So we just kept on trying stuff. That worked. One of the things that really made a difference was when we moved to Kentucky and we got in at the University of Kentucky to get the neurologist here. And that was because the doctor in North Carolina, UNC, had went to college with a guy that was at the University of Kentucky here. And this gentleman's an older gentleman. I don't know, he's in his late 60s probably. but he is a fantastic doctor. And now he has Hank on a patch that I put on every day on his back. And his scores on the test he would get at the neurologist uh, had went up 4 points after he had been on this medication for 6 months, where he could not process these things. He couldn't remember numbers. They would ask him, if you bought a cup of coffee for this much money and you gave the lady this much for the coffee, how much money would be left over? And Hank could not figure it out. It was not something simple and easy. But he could figure it out after he'd been on this medicine for 6 months. Now they titrated it up. He took one dose for 1 month. Then the next month we went up a dose, and the next month we're at the max dosage. So we've been real pleased with that. It did bring your quality of life back.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it really did. It made a difference. It was like the old person had come back out. So, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, if you're out there and you're struggling with a diagnosis, I hope this video helps, because sometimes it is a long process, but in the end, it could be very good for you.
Right, right. It is a long process, and if you're out there and you think you have Lewy body dementia, you know it's a long process. You've already been there and done that. You're already experiencing it. Have you already been a year or two? Have you been having symptoms for only 6 months? We knew in the beginning, when Hank first couldn't remember the words to Conway Twitty songs, and he tripped over his foot numerous times, and then he would get up in the night sometimes and just be walking the halls, and then started having hallucinations. It's like, well, something's going on, but nobody would do anything about it. Well, it can't be. He's only 46. It's like, yeah, it could be early onset, dementia, Alzheimer's, but people just didn't want to give him a diagnosis. And then for us, as we talked about in other videos, they wanted to know if we were applying for disability. It's like, no, we just want him to get better so he can keep counseling people. I can keep counseling people, and we move on with our life. But they were worried that we wanted to get disability, and I didn't see how that really made a difference. It's Hank's right to draw disability or not if he has this diagnosis. So, as Hank says, if you're struggling, it's a long, hard road. We don't struggle and, get the answers quick and easy. I'm not trying to dishearten you. I want to really encourage you to know that there are answers, but it's a long, hard road. I remember going to therapy to a lady, and it was at the same office where my psychiatrist at, Hank's psychiatrist is at, and he would see a gentleman for therapy also. And I remember going in to see her, and I was telling her all the research we've done and how he takes all these supplements, and she just looked at me and she said, Madonna, most people don't do this. I said, I don't understand. What are you talking about? And she said, people don't research and do all this work for their spouse to help them to get better. And I said, I just can't imagine not. And she said, it just doesn't work that way. And I said, well, I'm going to keep researching. I'm going to keep helping Hank in every way. But I can tell you now, as a caregiver, that takes a toll on us too, because we feel like it's always our responsibility. Like, as you can tell, Hank's more talkative today than usual. But when his days are bad, my days are bad. When his days are good, my days are good. You get hope because he feels good, and I lose hope when he don't feel well on those days.
And if you have a story to tell, especially like with this post, write something down below and let us hear your story.
Right.
And stuff, and then maybe more people will see it and stuff.
Or write us an email. Like we talked in another video about Paul that wrote us an email. If you write us an email and tell us your story, then we may try to make a video. I'm not going to promise we're going to make a video of everybody, because I don't know. I don't know how many emails we're going to get. If we only get 3 or 4, of course we're going to make a video about it, because we just want to help people. We want you to get better. If it's a loved one that's sick, we want them to get better. And we just believe that having the knowledge just changes. Knowledge is power, and we have learned that for sure in our life, that knowledge is power. And we're just here because we want you to have the knowledge now. It's me and Hank trying to give you guys knowledge. So we hope this video helps you in some way. If you like it, here I think Hank has something to say about liking. I can tell by that.
Yeah. I always say, if you like what we're doing, tell everybody, and if you don't, keep your mouth shut.
And so, and my philosophy is if you need anything, just let us know and we'll do what we can to help you.